What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Microcast. As usual, today's episode is hosted by myself, TJ David, and Zoe Rome.
On this week's episode, we're going to dive into our Chumbawamba moments from the past week, and then we're going to get into what we're into from books to hot baths for heat adaptation.
Great. And the meat of our discussion today is going to kind of revolve around the Leadville 100.
Woo!
We're going to dive into Zoe's past experience at the race and then my training leading up to the event, which is in about a week from when we're recording this podcast. As usual, you're going to want to stick around for the end. We've got some interesting hot or not topics that we'll give you our takes on. And just as an aside, if you're an athlete looking for support in your running journey, you've got a question or a topic you'd like us to address here, send us an email, microcosmcoaching@gmail.com. We'd really love to hear from you guys.
Oh, I'm so excited for this episode. The Leadville 100 is one of my favorite races, and it's been on your radar for quite a while as well. We know a lot of athletes who have really strong emotional connections to this race, and I'm just excited to get into the past, the present, and the future of our relationship to that historic event.
Yeah, that sounds great. Awesome.
So yeah, first off, we have our Chumbawamba moments. I would say, my moment this week where I got knocked down but got back up again, or am in the process of getting back up again, is I've had some stomach issues, not sure, food poisoning, viral something. It's been bugging me for a few days, and illness is always tough, right? Because I really love training. I struggle with slowing down. So I've really had to just sort of accept that there are some symptoms you shouldn't train through and just adjust my training accordingly. And I think that, it's always a good sort of signal to make sure that I'm just paying really attention to how I'm caring for myself, how I'm taking care of my own bandwidth. It's a good reminder that rather than muscling through training, it might be time to watch some 30 Rock reruns on the couch.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And I feel like that kind of applies to my Chumbawamba moment for the week. I've been really struggling with just feeling anxiety around uncertainty, just not feeling as grounded as I typically want to feel, especially because I'm in the practice of supporting people. That's my career, and I feel like to best do that, I really need to be grounded. And when I don't know, there's something about the fact that in life the only certainty is that there's always uncertainty. Every day there's something that you could feel uncertain about, and I think this is just one of those particular times for me where I don't know, maybe it's the accumulation of a lot of training, but I just don't feel like my bandwidth to deal with that, to accept it the way that I normally would, and to continue to move through it with grace and faith that things will turn out in the way that I hope that they will, and the way that I'm kind of envisioning and visualizing.
What do you do to stay grounded? What are your sort of grounding protocols?
I think I mentioned this on the podcast the last week, but I have a morning meditation practice that's a non-negotiable. I won't even start the workday. It's the first thing that I do every morning. That's kind of a newer thing for me, though. To be honest, I've only been doing that for a couple months. I actually was an end of the day meditator for a long time. Although back when I worked in the restaurant industry and was in food and beverage and then in hospitality before that, I actually did do pre-work meditation before every single shift. So I think I'm kind of in a roundabout way, I've gone back to that habit. I feel like it is really helpful. I tend to do that before I even go out for a run, before I even eat breakfast. Before anything, that's the first thing that I do. And then I think the other thing that I like to do is if I just notice any of those sensations, kind of like that uneasiness in my chest or my abdomen area where it's almost like a shortness of breath. That's kind of how I feel when I have a bit of anxiety. I tend to just really focus in on my breathing. I'll do box breathing or 4-7-8 breathing, and a few cycles of that can tend to help. And if it doesn't, then I will try to have the wherewithal to stop everything that I'm doing and do a short meditation, lie down, close my eyes, take a break. I feel like for me, this stuff manifests when I'm just not taking enough breaks.
Yeah.
When a lot of stuff is accumulating and I'm not taking the time to integrate it, and then I think I start to like get overwhelmed by all of everything that I'm taking in and that I'm doing. And it's a really great, I think particularly, you know, when we're training for, as we'll get into later in the call, but, you know, peaking and training, and you accumulated a lot of stress, and, you know, running requires a lot of focus and mental bandwidth. And eventually, you know, I think you can wear down that battery if you're not, you know, adding back to it. So
all things, you know, can add and subtract. But I think, you know, for a long time, we've been big proponents of meditation for not just, I mean, yes, for athletes, but for everyone. Right. And I think that, you know, we both have really different backgrounds when it comes to that specific tool. Like, you've been meditating since you were a tween, essentially. I'm newer to the meditation bandwagon. You know, I'm not someone who necessarily is like loving that stillness life. I'm, you know, I can be a bit chaotic as an energy. I like to be moving and doing stuff. And like, it took me a long time to sort of like, lean into my uncomfortable, which is stillness, which is quiet, which is, being intentionally with my thoughts and feelings and not avoiding them through work and athletics and all of these things. And I am just, you know, I'm a huge fan of meditation again, and it's something that's like backed by so much research as well. But especially for folks who don't think they're good at it, like that is the type of person who most needs it. Like the Zoes of the world who tend to overthink. If you're the person who hears this and is like, I don't know if meditation's for me, like it is 100% for you.
Yeah, because you're judging yourself right there, thinking that meditation is not for you. That's a judgment. And meditation is a tool that helps you quiet that part of your brain and accept those thoughts as just thoughts.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the Headspace app for meditation as well. They have a bunch of just like sort of like 20-day sort of programs that can like target specific, like whatever skill set or like challenge you're looking to work through. That's, you know, kind of a nice one for that. And it's not, you know, it's not super out there, and it's like a very approachable practice for folks that like don't have a ton of grounding in it.
Yeah, totally. And I think, you know, something that I generally recommend for athletes, and this is the reason why we ask the athletes to check in daily into their training log, because the process of building that self-awareness helps you identify the ways that this stuff manifests for you. So like uncertainty is something for me that is challenging. And I think, you know, people could probably relate to that. But I think particularly for me as a small business owner responsible for the livelihood of 5 other coaches, and hopefully more in the future, responsible for over 200 athletes in our program. I just, you know, sometimes I feel a lot of that pressure. And a way for me to deal with that is to develop an awareness around how that manifests, what those feelings are, what those thoughts are that might occur. And to do that is a process of reflection. And so, you know, the training log, although primarily is for training to be a really great athlete, and that doesn't mean to be a Courtney Dauwalter or a Kilian Jornet great, but to realize your potential or to begin the process of working towards it, you need to begin the process of developing awareness around the way that your body responds, the way that your signs and signals kind of like manifest themselves. And a good way to develop that is just checking in with yourself each day when you go into your training log and you want to reflect a little bit on the training with your coach, like, oh, I was feeling this, that, or the other thing. And like, because 90% of what we do as coaches is like build a coach athlete relationship with our folks. And that is the singular most important part of the whole process. The training plan is probably worth 10% of what actually goes into the training. And so like when you use that log, you develop that awareness, you and your coach go back and forth a little bit, or you both gain awareness. That relationship evolves, and then the training, the nuts and bolts of it evolve too. And so this is something that I've really learned. This is going to play into kind of what I'm into this week around hot bath immersion and why I'm doing it now and why I didn't do it, interspersed throughout 6 to 8 weeks, which is another way that you can do it. Learning about yourself as an athlete and then knowing when to implement certain protocols is the key. Because we often succumb to some of these things like uncertainty. We get overwhelmed that we need to take a break, or stress at work. We get overwhelmed by it, then we need to take a break, like all these things. But like in theory, if you are aware of yourself, if you're aware of how those things develop for you and manifest over time, you'll be implementing things as you go. And so you never really truly need to take a break. You're always refreshing. You're always charging that battery up. And of course, this is a big work in progress for me, or else I probably wouldn't be talking about it. But like, I think that there's so much value in the way we structure our coaching programs and the way that I work with my coach in a very similar way.
Right.
It has helped me to develop a lot of awareness. Like, yeah, I've been meditating since I was 13 and I'm 36. That's many years of meditation. And certainly that has changed, I think, the way that I deal with my emotions and things like that and situations like this. But like, certainly it's not a cure-all either. There's times where you like I've been feeling, where it's like I kind of come to the end of my rope, so to speak. Like, I don't feel like I've got, like yesterday, my run, I just didn't feel like I had mental battery left.
Your candle burns at both ends.
It does. And I think that's just the fact, I'm running a business, I'm coaching, and I'm training at a high level.
Dude. I mean, I feel like that's kind of the household vibe lately, right? Like, I'm putting a book out while training for a 100, while supporting you training for a 100. So,
right.
It's just like
about that. Yeah.
I've never wished more that there was a place in town that just delivered pizza.
I mean, God, if we lived in Boulder, we probably would never
we'd
cook.
be door dashing up a storm right now.
We'd need to get into a different line of work for that.
Just to afford the DoorDash.
Yeah, definitely.
DoorDash and meditation, highly recommended bandwidth extenders.
I mean, it is though, because like at the end of a big day, it's like, I had a tough run yesterday dealing with the taper, just not
especially
feeling
like
great.
Cooking vegetarian, where everything requires like 4-dimensional chess of like, you open any recipe and it's like, begin soaking cashews yesterday, and it's like, well, fuck, dude. It would have been great to know that yesterday.
Right. Like,
recipe.
Sometimes we're not doing ourselves any favors. And I think that continual awareness, the process of continual growth, the process
just like not trying to do everything on hard mode. Like, sometimes you're like, what if we just like didn't press the tofu? What if we just like got 90-second rice instead of like 4-day rice?
Those little things, they really do add up though. I mean, imagine, I was thinking about this, like, how many hours in my day am I actually sitting down and resting? Say Strava told me I'm averaging 13 hours of training a week, 80 miles a week for the year. Significant amount of training while running a business, while supporting another athlete at the same level in their training, while, also coaching on top of running a business, so it's like, how many hours am I actually resting? Like, how am I adding to my mental and emotional battery so I can show up and be present for everybody in my life, my athletes, my coaches, for you, to be present in my own training, to then go race at my potential. You have to have a full battery to race at your potential, because it requires so much focus to say, I'm going to continue running at this effort, even though it hurts, even though it's uncomfortable.
It's dark.
And I was like, man, I probably, like, other than sleeping, maybe only get like 2 hours or something of actual rest in the course of a day. And I don't really feel like that's probably enough, like 6 days a week. I do get, cause Saturday, half hour in the car to the trail, 4 to 6 hours of running, half hour back. Like, that's almost the whole day. Like, that's the day where I rest the most in the afternoon. Sometimes on Sunday, I feel the best on my run because I've had the whole afternoon to rest. But then I'm like, I coach so many athletes who like would be happy to have 10 minutes of rest in the course of their day. And so, it's
paging parents.
Right. And so, I think about that a lot. I work a 6-day work week. We're recording this on a Sunday evening at 5 o'clock because that's when we can get it in the course of a week. And I'm like, maybe in the long run, like that's not advantageous for me. Maybe more rest is better. What I dislike is like getting to the end of something like Leadville's in a week and feeling like now I have to really fully recharge my battery because it's gone. And like now I'm dealing with the mental and emotional toll of it being depleted. Like I'm feeling weird about the uncertainty of the race, weird about the uncertainty in our business, our business. Like I'm just like, and when my battery is full, I'm so much more accepting of those things. So that's what I'm into right now. I've been thinking and introspecting and just giving myself grace, like not trying to judge myself for where I am, but also knowing that I think I've got a lot of room for improvement, a lot of room for more self-care and, thinking about just cultivating a stronger inner world where I'm better at supporting myself in the art of resting, I think, and knowing that I am enough, even if I do rest. I don't have to work on Sunday necessarily. Sometimes I enjoy it. Sometimes, I kind of cringe at it because I'm really tired from training. So it's hard to figure it all out. That's part of the uncertainty. And that's part of that's the only certainty. That's kind of where my mind is. It's like, I'm going into Leadville. It's like, I don't know. I've done some great training. It's been a long year. The only certainty is I know I'm going to start feeling probably pretty healthy and have a good chance of finishing.
Yeah. It's like my favorite line. My favorite line about, feeling ultras ever was I was running with a guy when I did the Leadville 100, and this guy who's like a little bit older than me, we were running together, and he's like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, I actually feel pretty good. And he goes, oh, don't worry, it won't last. And like, I love that because it's so true. Like, no matter what you're feeling, and this is like true in life and in races, like it's all, you're just riding the waves, baby. Like you're going to feel good. Awesome. Like, don't, feeling that healthy sense of like, I'm just feeling the thing that I'm feeling right now and not adding additional panic because you're concerned you'll feel different later, or feeling panic because like you don't feel good in the moment. Like that doesn't help you. And just like assessing like, all right, like, okay, I'm not feeling good. Can I take a gel? Can I like, is there some like specific concrete thing I can do to feel better? If not, like, all right, I'm just gonna, acknowledge that I'm feeling this way and I'm gonna keep moving.
Right. And I love that. And so, again, we'll keep harping on this uncertainty thing because I think it's really interesting, especially in the context of running. So like one of the ways that I've approached a lot of races in the past is, I think about these moments, I call them rise up moments where, I go to the race specifically to have to work through those rise up moments, those moments that like, I know I'm inevitably not going to be feeling good. It's going to be like deep into the race, but I know I'm going to need to stay on the gas in order to continue to be competitive with myself, with the people out there who I'm competing against in order to find my potential. Those are the rise up moments, like in Argentina, it was that like 30% graded climb out of nowhere with
mile like 48.5.
Yeah, it was like, where did that come from?
You could see the town, like you could hear the finish line, and you're going up. I wouldn't say I was so upset. I feel like I had like fully experienced ego death like 12 miles earlier, so I was like, every time I encountered something truly fucked up during that race, I just thought to myself, might as well. Like, there might as well be a dumb like off trail hand over hand climb here. Like, might as well. Like, oh, I'm scooting on my ass down a ravine full of cacti. Might as well.
But I think that's the mindset that you have to adopt, or you have to get into that mode of operating under, that acceptance, because that's where you're like, then you stop fighting it as much and resisting it. And you're just kind of like, I'm just going and I'm focusing on being smooth. And like, I know this hill will eventually end. And like, if I just stay smooth, then it's going to feel really good on the way down the other side. And so like, I think I love running as this, metaphor for life, because we have so many moments where we're confronted with uncertainty. I'm judging myself on a 30% climb at the end of a race when I'm tired. Am I moving quick enough? Is someone going to come up and snipe me from behind and, take my place on the podium? Whatever it is, like, you have all sorts of different thoughts going through your head. And what makes it harder is when you say, it shouldn't feel like this. I shouldn't be here. This shouldn't be so steep.
Yeah,
this shouldn't be on the course.
Shouldn'ts are never helpful out there.
No, but like,
because the course is going to do what's going to do.
And so I am trying to like remember all of these moments where I've really successfully gotten into that place of acceptance and then performed at my highest level as a result of that. Because that is, if you can do it there under that much stress and pressure, you can totally do it in life.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of running. And if you F it up in running, who cares? It's just running.
Yeah.
Practice that as many times as you can in running till you get it right, and then start practicing it in life. And like, that's kind of how I've been like got through the last like 4 or 5 days, is just like oscillating between like that, I shouldn't feel like this, and like getting back to that place, like, this is how it's supposed to feel. You've done all this work, like, this is normal, kind of like inner dialogue. But it's, I think I noticed for myself, like, when my battery is closer to empty, it's so much harder to default in acceptance.
Oh yeah, I mean, boy, do I know that feeling. But the good news is there's still upsides to all of this. So I want to hear what you're into this week, and it's hot baths, which sounds like, I hear that and I'm like, yes, like, this is me reading a romance novel,
right,
hanging out for an hour and a half in the tub.
People are like, oh, he is taking rest. And it's like,
But you're just like slowly, you're just like poaching yourself, just like sous vide TJ.
I'm just slowly dying in the bathtub to try to eke out some additional adaptations before the race.
So tell us about this hot water immersion protocol that you're doing to kind of help get ready for Leadville, which, it's up pretty high. It's above 10,000 feet for a lot of it, right around 10,000 feet. Also a lot of sun, a lot of exposure, and it feels pretty dang hot up high. So you're preparing for this with this specific heat protocol, which we like actually for athletes because it's so accessible. You don't have to go to a sauna. It just uses your home bathtub. So tell us how it works and why you're using this specific protocol.
Yeah, well, you said it right there. I mean, it's the most, I would say, a lot of studies have been done with dry sauna. Dry sauna is great. Like, if you have a dry sauna at home, or you've got the time in your day to go to a gym where you have one, doing a dry sauna protocol is awesome. But, I personally, I don't have 30 minutes on either end to drive somewhere.
Yeah.
And for us, it would actually be like a 25. We just don't have
the whole
time.
Thing. It's a whole, we don't have DoorDash. We don't have a sauna. We're really roughing it out here in Carbondale.
We are not roughing it, but we don't have some of the same little maybe perks that folks in a bigger city, maybe down in Boulder or Denver, might have. But I have a bathtub, and we have hot water.
You have a bathtub,
which is something to be said.
We don't live in a yurt.
No, I really am grateful for that, because if you, couple good studies on this, I'll link to them in the show notes. But the first time I did this protocol, you can do a 3, 6, or 12-day protocol. They will all elicit adaptations, which is awesome. You can do it from your house. I have done this with several athletes. I actually did this for my athlete, Mike, who went under 24 at Western States last year. So like, I've used this with athletes that I coach too. But I found it, for me, really, really helpful, because when I start to add in a bunch of extra stuff in my training, I just get really stressed because I have a lot of other stuff going on. I'm taking care of a lot of other people and their training. Like, I don't really have time to like get in a sauna, go somewhere. I need to minimize all the barriers to entry that I possibly can.
This is our version of 90-second rice. It's just 90-second TJ, piping hot.
So
not playing on hard load.
The key really with the hot bath protocol, you got to get your bathtub up to 103, if not higher. I've never.
Have you ever checked ours? We should do it,
but
it does feel pretty dang hot.
Is hotter than Dan's hot tub, which is 104. And because his doesn't burn my legs when I get in, and our tub burns.
Yeah,
it's very hard to get in, so it's definitely super hot. I'd say it's probably 105, 10, like it's hot enough.
Yeah.
Because I can feel that it actually is working, because I start to sweat profusely really quickly, which is the key. But the key to this is to get into the bath as quickly as you can after, about 50, 60 minutes. I don't go like super into the hard data.
So after you run, you get in?
Because your core temperature is already up.
Right.
And so you want to kind of like
go do your run.
Go deeper on that. So when your core temp is already up, then you get into the hot bath, and it really pushes that core temperature even further.
Right.
It starts to dilate all of your blood vessels. It starts to elicit, all the blood goes to your skin. You start to sweat a lot. And the study that I've used to kind of like hype myself up to do this is really sweet. I forget the name of it, but they did this purposely because they felt like the hot bath was the most convenient for the most people. And so they wanted to study that. And I really like that because, like, again, when you're adding in an additional stress, hot water immersion is a training stress. You can only do it when you lower other training stresses. Mm-hmm. You cannot add it on top of, a 15-hour training week. That's only going to up your likelihood of overtraining or producing maladaptations.
Yeah, and if you're doing a 15-mile training week and want to add heat stress, just come live with us and be our live-in chef. Because we could use a relaxed hand around the house. Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, but runners, I think so many athletes that I work with, they just have a hard time. And we can relate to this ourselves, just they have a hard time just doing less or being told they need to do less.
Right. Especially when on Strava, it's so easy to quantify training stimulus in the form of miles and feet and time on feet and whatnot. And there's no bath log on Strava. So it's really hard. I think sometimes all the incentives that we have point towards doing more until that bites you in the butt and you get overtrained or you experience these sort of negative fatigue feedback loops. So I think that it takes a lot of discipline and an understanding, again, of the science and best evidence available to say, okay, I recognize that this is training stimulus, and the way that adding in strength training would be training stimulus, or a treadmill double would be a treadhill double would be training stimulus. And you just have to, you have to respond accordingly.
Totally. And that's why I wait till the taper to do this. And I don't do, I do 6 days on, after every run, as close to as soon as the run's over as I can. If there's more time between the run and when I get in the tub, I just go longer in the tub. But the duration in the study, they were doing really long durations, 30 to 40 minutes, but they also didn't live at altitude. I think the temperature in the study was a little bit lower than the actual temperature I'm running in. And I really go a lot by feel, having done a lot of this over the last 3 or 4 years, that I just don't need a lot to really start to get more comfortable in the heat. So I tend not to push it because it just adds stress. And then I know what my responses are. I'm less patient. I'm more grumpy. I don't need any of that in my life. Or less of it is always good. So I don't push myself to those limits. Certainly there are athletes out there who might want to do that. But I think 15
I
to
think
20...
very few times do I feel with most of my athletes, I'm we need to push the limit. I'm we need to just stay in the productive realm.
That's right. And so I do 6 days on, then I do a day off, and then I do 3 days on, and then the race is in 48 hours. So that's the protocol. I adopted it right off this study. I used it before Argentina. Did really, really well in the heat. And that was probably the toughest race for me in the heat because I lost a flask during that race. So I couldn't race with the adequate amount of fluids
Was this your spraying flask?
No, this was
actual drinking flask?
It was supposed to be for drinking. Yeah.
Oh no, that's a critical flask.
It was critical. Yeah.
It's not like a decorative flask.
But I know that like my tolerance, I was sweating a lot, but some of the benefits of this, ups your blood plasma levels, your blood volume increases, so you're going to dilate a lot quicker. Your body's going to be much more efficient at keeping you cool when it gets warm. So, I mean, that's huge. Also dilutes the amount of electrolyte in your sweat. So that sweat concentration goes down, makes it a little bit easier. As long as you're getting the fluids in, it makes it a little bit easier to maintain your electrolyte levels. And, for me, I was pushing a lot of volume the last like 5 or 6 weeks, 13 to 18 hour weeks, which is a lot.
Maybe not the best time to also add in a heat stress.
Yeah, it's just not a good time to add heat stress. Maybe I could have done it if I wasn't running a business.
Yeah, you also weren't getting to the end of the week and you were like, man, Zoe, life is just like so easy. Can you please give me more things to do? Because I just gee whiz, I have all this bandwidth and no idea what to do with it. I've walked the dog, I just Swiffered the house. Do you need a bangs trim? Like, what can I do? Can I, it was...
we were traveling to races in there.
Right.
San Juan. I went back east for family obligations, and we went to Never Summer. And so, those are all stress too.
Yeah, stress is stress.
Significant.
So personal question, what do you do in there? Do you listen to podcasts? Like, how do you make it fun and tolerable?
I'll tune in a little podcast, music, or lately I've been doing my USCA training cert in there.
Yes, yeah. I love that.
Yeah, getting through some of the chapters of that.
You're experiencing training adaptations and learning about evidence-based training.
Yeah,
I love it.
It might be a little bit of a
2 birds, 1 stone
overload for my brain, but who knows? I feel I'm get 100 on all the quizzes. But,
there you go.
I've been doing this for a long time, so I probably shouldn't.
Yeah, just like the idea of you studying in the bathtub. That's very fun.
I think, and so I've also been going up to elevation and running the last couple of days, up way higher than the actual average elevation at Leadville, and I feel pretty good up there. So
nice. There you go.
And I can tell this is working because I'm sweating earlier in the run. Much earlier, dilating really quickly, and that's all just really key for being prepared for a hot race.
Yeah, nice. Well, what I'm into is a book called Fat Talk by one of my favorite journalists, Virginia Solsmith. It's a book about parenting in the age of diet culture, though I'm not a parent. And I was actually raised by pretty, progressive, awesome parents who were always really focused on treating food as a really positive and connective sort of thing. I was also raised on planet Earth in the culture that we live in. So I've really enjoyed this book and how it sort of disentangles diet culture, kind of weeds it out from the root, and talks a lot about how people can message to children and to family members in a way that's a lot more positive. And I would just really recommend this book for anyone that has kids, doesn't have kids, that's curious about this sort of stuff. There's a lot of really awesome studies in there. There's an entire book about how diet culture and athletics, particularly youth sports, intersect. And I think that there's just so many takeaways for pretty much everyone in this book that I would just really, really recommend it.
Awesome. Heck yeah. Let's make sure to get that added to the show notes too.
Yeah. I also listened to the audiobook, and it's read by the journalist, and she has a very charming voice, and I would just really recommend it. I'm a big fan of audiobooks on trail runs.
Nice. Yeah. I like those for short, easy runs as well.
Yeah. Any length of run, really. Just not I can't imagine trying to do a tempo workout, just listening to someone read, a study aloud to me.
I've done it, you can really
I believe that you've done it. Yeah, you run to jazz. That doesn't surprise me at all.
I don't need much help getting pumped up.
Yeah. Speaking of getting pumped up, we are so pumped because it is the week before the Leadville 100. TJ is running this year. We have a few athletes running, so we're really psyched. We're going to be there. And, I think it's kind of a fun sort of full circle situation for us as coaches, as partners, as friends, as runners, and I'm just excited to dive in.
Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about your race at Leadville, which was your first time racing, my first time crewing, but I think a really big learning opportunity.
So much was learned.
Definitely influenced a little bit of, my training. And
yeah, hopefully you did exactly the opposite of everything I did. And you have, so it's looking good. So I first ran the Leadville 100, and I was 24 at the time, which is wild to think about, because that's just like very young to be doing anything, much less a challenging 100-mile race. But I got a gold coin that I had won at the marathon, and I, like a very naive trail runner, was like, great, well, I've done a trail marathon, I can surely do a trail 100. And at that time I hadn't even done a 50-miler. Really had very little racing experience, but I really loved long runs, really loved ultras. I figured that the perfect time to try to race a 100 was right after graduating grad school, moving to Aspen to start a whole new job, new life, new career. And pro tip, don't do that.
Again, stress is stress.
Stress is stress, but we live and we learn. And I think I did basically all the rookie 100-mile training things in training for this race, especially like for Leadville specifically, which I think a lot of people... So just like some context about the Leadville 100, there's no qualifying standard. So you don't have to have run a 100 to run Leadville. So it's a lot of people's first 100, which is awesome and great, but it's also really, really challenging. It also kind of markets itself as like a 100-mile, it looks very mountainous in the imagery, and it is not. It is an economy 100. Like it's less steep than the Western States 100. It's like only a little bit steeper than Rio del Lago, which is basically around a lake in California. It's, and a lot of the climbing in Leadville is super, super concentrated. So it's like a few sort of like discrete climbs linked together with a lot of super runnable terrain. So I very foolishly trained for this race by overtraining, but also hiking a ton of 14ers, which is just atrocious training if you want to get better at running. It's great training if you want to get slow and diminish your running economy, which I did in spades training for this race. So my training was a total mess. My sort of like life stress situation, also a bit of a mess. Thankfully, I had met my new best friend, TJ David, at the time, and managed to recruit him into crewing for me, which was fun and exciting.
Yeah, we had such an awesome day out there.
We did. You took me up and over Hope Pass. It was really fun. I was eating Oreos.
That was such a powerful moment. Love that, coming into Twin Lakes. That was so epic.
Yeah, I do remember feeling so pumped, and like that's one of the fun things about hundreds is like the highs are so high, and boy oh boy are the lows low.
Yeah, I'm not. Yes. Okay. I don't know yet. Yeah, you're right. They probably are.
Just buckle up. But remember, if you feel good, don't worry. It won't last.
Right. Exactly. Ride the wave while you
Ride the wave, baby. Whatever wave it is. You don't choose the wave. You just choose how you surf it. But I was pretty, I was just like really young. I didn't have a coach. I didn't follow a training plan. I was just going off like vibes. I didn't even have a fueling plan. What I did have is the most kick-ass crew of all time. Shout out to both Coach Kristen and Coach Drew. Weren't coaches at the time. We're just baller-ass friends that, came all the way out to Leadville to support me. And microcosm athlete Lauren Ross came out, one of the microcosm OGs. And even though I ended up DNFing right outside of space camp, around mile 85 or so, I have never felt so loved and supported and held by my community. And I think it like really sort of did like ignite a spark in my imagination that I really love the distance. I really love the Leadville race specifically, which is strange because like it's not a very pretty course. Like it's not like the Hope Pass is amazing and really cool, but most of it's kind of just like a gravel grind. Like I would not, it's not going to be in 50 classic North American trail runs or anything, but it's still so special and the community's amazing. And I just, I think that with proper training, it can be a really great sort of like race for a lot of folks. But some things I learned were get a coach, get a training plan, develop that running economy, slowly build that volume over years and years and years, and embrace the process and don't force the long stuff before you're ready.
Yeah. I mean, such important takeaways there. And it's so funny that Leadville is often like people's like first ever trail race experience.
Don't do that. I will say, don't do that.
I'm not advocating for it, but it is one of those races you get in off the lottery.
Mhm.
People have read Born to Run. There's a
I
legacy.
know the Born to Run to Leadville DNF pipeline is very short.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that people underestimate how hard the race is.
But it's also hard in ways you don't anticipate.
That's right. Yeah, totally.
Like,
And
you just need to be able to, like, freaking roll after 80 miles, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm told.
Yeah, because you get chewed up by Hope Pass, and then you still got 40 miles left. And a lot of it's, still pretty high. There can be like intense temperature swings because of the altitude. It can be really, really hot. It can also snow. The year I did it, it rained several times on and off. I was like rotating out rain jackets all day, every day. I didn't think to bring pants because I just like never run in pants before. So I do remember shuffling out of the outbound aid station wearing pants that I had borrowed from Lauren Ross, Microcosm OG, and they were like MC Hammer style pants because it was just like the only thing that anyone had in approximately my size. And I remember wearing your giant like Dynafit ski jacket and MC Hammer pants, and I was just like, I've never looked more stupid. This is such a stupid event. I look real stupid.
That was fun. That was super fun. Yeah, man. That was such a. Hundreds are hard. Hundreds are just so hard.
And that one is hard.
Really do need to train for years and years to adequately prepare for this stuff.
Yeah.
If you care at all about finding your potential, tapping into the deeper sides of what you're really capable of, you'll put the foundation together over time that gets you to one of these races. If that's not something you care about, you might go for it. You could be successful. You might not be. But we're always going to be talking about the process. We're always going to be talking about building the foundation and the years that it really takes to go out and run one of these so you can hopefully express the highest potential athletic performance
and I
that
think
you're capable of.
DNFs or like these sort of peak experiences at these big sort of legendary events can really point athlete in one of two directions. They either experience adversity and they quit. They tell themselves they're not a runner, they're never going to be good at this, why even try? But for some reason, whatever was going on in my brain, I was like, that was the best experience ever. It means so much to me to do this race that I will do whatever it takes, even if what it takes is taking years and years and years, which is like, that has been what it's taking, right? Like to come back to the distance, to come, even reapproach that event at all. And I love it. Like, it's been such a positive journey. Like, it's like such a winding journey. And I feel so grateful having had that experience because it set me on this really positive path I'm on now to get, getting connected with our coach, David Roche, and just like trying to pursue mastery at the 100-mile distance, which is a challenging and fickle distance. And I just really love that there's an entire, sort of community of people who can also be as sort of process driven. And I feel like it's just, again, even though it was kind of a setback and kind of a failure, it like that experience set me exactly on the course that I needed to be on. And I think, again, like what defines us most as athletes is how we respond to those setbacks, how we respond to that adversity. You can either use it to tell yourself a story that I don't belong, I'll never be good at this distance, or you can say, that was fucking rad, I can't wait to figure this out.
Yeah, and that's kind of my mindset. I'm holding the vision of the best possible outcome that I can have, which I don't know, would be something like a sub 18 hour 100, somewhere in there. I feel like that's definitely within my capability on a good day. And I'm holding the vision for that. And I'm not letting go of that while also knowing, so many obstacles and things that you don't plan for could happen out there. You definitely have no idea how the day will unfold. And that's kind of part of the fun and the experience. But also, those obstacles, no matter what happens, if I achieve the performance goal that I have set for myself or not, I'm constantly growing. I'm constantly creating. How could it be a setback? How could it be something that I look at that, pulls me back or asks me to rethink what I'm doing? No, like this is just another opportunity for growth and learning. And I'm going to take whatever I get out of the race, and I'm going to use it in that way to propel me forward to continue to move forward in this career as both an athlete and a coach. And I think that's like the beauty of this. Like, this is just running. You get to choose how you use all of the experiences. I don't like to say my way is better than others, but I definitely, we both have as coaches seen people who, they hold so tightly to the outcome that they want to achieve that when they know that it's not happening, they DNF, or, maybe they quit, or they have like a pretty big reckoning or mental health issues after an event. And, I would just offer up a different opportunity. Go in there with the largest objective to grow and to learn, and let everything else be a bonus.
I'm curious what your relationship to this specific, before we dive, I do want to talk about your training, because I feel like it has been sort of like a master class in consistency. But I also just wanted to like quick check in, like, what is your sort of like emotional relationship with this event, right? Like why the Leadville 100? Why did you want to do this race specifically? What brought you here? Why the investment?
It's kind of our backyard 100.
Yeah.
That's really what has drawn me to the course. It's drawn me to support a number of friends here, to support you at this race. I've seen a lot of athletes that I've looked up to do very well here, and then to use this as an opportunity to launch into furthering their skill set in hundreds. I just feel like for me, this is like a great entry into the 100-mile distance. I like to run on roads. I like to grind on on runnable terrain.
You like that running economy work?
Yeah, I've been working on it for years, and I feel pretty good about where I'm at with that. There's always uncertainty. You can't say for sure how you're going to feel, but I've been training for those specific demands, and that interests me. Like, I'm curious to see, how my legs are going to feel after Hope Pass, and what kind of splits I'll have on the roads, and for how long, or if, indefinitely, and what, the situation exactly will be. I'm curious of I've run in a lot of the areas before, so just like linking it all together kind of makes sense. And of course, I got the entry through a pretty good run at Silver Rush last year. So I don't know. I like the vibe of it.
Yeah.
I've spent so much time.
Love the collegiates
at Leadville and in the area. And it's just, for me, it kind of like makes sense. Like, why travel somewhere to run 100 when you've got one? This is a pretty close race for us. When we lived in Aspen too, it was even closer, but this is kind of our backyard 100 at the moment.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you did this 50-mile race in Argentina. Actually, no, let's back this way up. When to you did you start? When was the first day you put your running shoes on? And you're like, I am training for the Leadville freaking 100 today.
I think it was probably the first 10 plus hour week of training that I could put down after getting sick. And I think people who've listened to the podcast, or if you haven't listened, I talk a lot about the health issues that I had. And I think it was kind of like the first workouts I was able to finally do months after, not being able to breathe in my running. And that's where I knew I was like, I'm stepping into, this is all uncertain. I feel like I'm kind of running volume limited, because I can't take on too much stress. I don't know if it's going to cause my allergy issues to get worse. If it's going to impact my immune system, my immune function, which was the issue, and just being volume limited. I don't know. There was a lot of uncertainty. So every week I kind of got to check in with myself and check off a little win. And when I went to Argentina, obviously we did some great training here at home, but it was a long winter, and we had a big boot camp at Jonathan Levitt's summer camp in
Camp Jonathan.
Camp Jonathan, and did a huge weekend. And I was like, and I felt really good after that week. And for me, it was the biggest volume that I'd done since training for CCC. I think it was in the, 14 to 15 hour range, which is, I feel as a coach is objectively a lot of running, especially if it's on trail. Just that can just beat up your body. And like, I recovered pretty well from that. And then the race in Argentina, there was a lot of uncertainty. I didn't know if my body was going to handle it. I had allergy symptoms during the taper and had to be on medication, like allergy meds and stuff for the race, which just makes me tired and doesn't make me feel 100% my best. But like, I still had a really good day. Objectively. And like, I think at that point I knew like it was on, like if I can do this 50, there's nothing that's going to happen to me during Leadville that I couldn't at least like power hike it in. If I needed to do like a 30-hour 100, like I could do it.
Golden hour, baby.
Yeah. Like you just never know. I mean, I'm not the kind of person who's going to be like, well, if I'm not going to go, under 19 hours or under 18 hours, then forget about it. I'm going to just DNF. I'm going there to finish the 100. It's tough. Like I feel I'm not feeling great about my allergies right now, to be honest. And just as I'm thinking about it, my head doesn't feel good. But I'm like, I think that there's very little that could happen that would prevent me. And I've kind of like prevent me from getting that finish. It would have to be really catastrophic. Long-term health would have to be in question. Yeah. That's what, and so like training really, it started with those small workouts, those threshold workouts, and then getting up into those bigger weeks, 80, 90 miles. And then obviously Argentina was kind of like, I definitely can do this. Like there's no reason to back off. And so that's kind of when like, we really started pushing the training, and then I was able to run more on trail, dried out all the snow and stuff like that. But I've really focused. It's been an interesting summer training because like a lot of the key weekends you've had a race. So I haven't doing
it on hard mode.
Yeah. Like back-to-back as many back-to-back long runs. My trainings just look different this time than for CCC.
Yeah.
And so I think, it's kind of forced me to like look specifically at the terrain and like really plug into like exactly how am I going to prepare for the demands of Hope Pass.
You've really been focused on sort of like quad banging and then forcing turnover on long runs, right? Like, so seeking out a long run that starts with like substantial climbing and descending and then grinding it out on a road. I'm curious, like, how that strategy has been for you, and if there's any other specific things that you've done different for this race.
No, I mean, that's the thing that I've done differently in this training compared to any of the other races I've done. Most races are like, you have a very obvious elevation profile, you know what you're going to deal with the terrain, but this race is like, you kind of have like a whole different section of racing in the middle of the race.
It's kind of like an Oreo with technical altitude, alpine cream filling.
Right. You've got 5,000 or 6,000 feet of vertical in like, I don't know, 25 miles or something like that. I don't know. I'm not too worried about the exact details, but it's a high concentration of vert pretty packed into the middle of the race. And like, I feel like that's like where you can definitely lose the race, but probably not where you're going to win the race.
Right.
And so I've really been training to like feel strong on those downs, but not
be heroic.
Exactly. But to be really strong in the sense that like to be able to get back onto runnable terrain and still be clocking
stoked to run.
Yeah. Low 7-minute miles at an easy effort, like really feeling good doing that and at elevation.
Yeah. How have you been training for the elevation? Because one of the, the things that's so challenging about Leadville is that it's up pretty high. So how have you been confronting that in your training?
I again, like, I don't get overly concerned about it because the actual average elevation isn't that much higher than where we already are. But I've just been making sure to get up into that kind of like up into that 10,000 foot average elevation range, maybe a little bit higher, as frequently as I can.
Yeah. Is there anything else you're doing specifically or differently to get ready for Leadville?
No, not really. I mean, really, like,
if you zoom out, you've been training for this for years and years and years.
I'm just gonna let the dog out.
Bowie's getting so excited about Leadville.
Get out there. All right. Can't focus. Sorry. I mean, yeah, like, I think the main difference is like being able to have that turnover after all that steep descending. And so my focus has been on practicing that exact skill set.
Yeah.
And doing that up high. So I also kind of understand how my cardiovascular system is and my perceived effort is going to handle that and how I'm going to actually feel in those situations so I can really be attuned to, the effort that feels good for me, that feels sustainable for the entire 100 miles and doesn't feel like I'm running outside of myself. Because again, like, this is a lot of uncertain territory for me.
Yeah.
My longest race is 100K, but in terms of like the amount of time out, it's actually going to be very similar to probably how long it will, on a good day, will take me to do Leadville. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. And like, I don't know. I'm trying not to get overly concerned about any one piece of nuance in the race. And again, just stay super consistent, continue to put the work in, make sure I'm not losing touch with, like, I'm already a great mountain runner. I have great mountain running results. Like, where I can continually work and evolve is on the running economy side and feeling efficient, and especially like on rolling grindy terrain, being able to continue to run those gradual uphills. I'm working a ton on that because that is probably going to be what slows me down or what allows me to do well. And so that's where I would say, if any piece of nuance is focused on that, and only, we'll see on race day how that plays out.
Yeah. But I sort of think like the magical key that unlocks Leadville is embracing all the least glamorous parts of training, right? Like, think about all the times in the winter you've just done grindy laps around town. And like, every time you've gone out and done 10 to 12 miles on a day, it was snowing, it was crappy, but you like got out there and did it anyway at like, at your easy effort. I just hope that you can channel that energy at the end there.
Me too. Yeah.
When you're running around the lake and when you're doing the final little cresting into town and it's on a steeper hill, then it's going to feel bad. It's not going to feel good. It's going to feel way longer than it looks on paper, too.
I'll have my pacer carry some Alpha Flies for that section.
We're going to quick go buy you some Alpha Flies for the Leadville 100.
Well, that road, oh man, I feel like it's such a weirdly contrived course, and
oh yeah,
I don't know how I feel about it. Check in with me a week after,
We'll be back. Maybe not next Sunday, because hopefully your brain is on vacation.
We will not be checking in next Sunday.
If you're able to string together full sentences, that's great. Any parting thoughts here as we sort of like wrap up our Leadville conversation?
No, I think, if you're an athlete who's training for an odd race, like a race with a strange profile, train for that big eccentric load that your quads really need to feel strong when you're running later in the race. I mean, that, like, if I can just sum up how I've trained in all my long runs over the past 6 weeks to 8 weeks it's been like really steep, really hard downhills. Try to be sore. Try to get as sore as you can. Try to run with those downs with as much intention as possible, and then run the flats after. It's better, I think, the more that I do this as a coach, the more I work with athletes from Hard Rock to Western States to Rio del Lago, like all sorts of three very different racing experiences. Like the more, it's just like that eccentric loading is really what makes the difference. So like, I feel like for a race like this, like I've definitely done probably more of concentrated eccentric loading than is probably necessary, but I've done that very, not responsibly, but strategically and maybe responsibly.
Yeah.
I've done that there's been purpose behind that.
Yeah.
It's so that I feel like I can still run and run well after Hope Pass and not be shuffling or hiking and running or walking.
Yeah.
That's the goal. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm stoked to be there. Hope to see some of our athletes out there. It'll be an adventure. That's the one thing that is certain.
Yeah. All right. Let's do a little hot or not.
A little hot or not before we get too nostalgic here.
Yeah.
Also, fully, just to backtrack, I feel like the second time we ever hung out, we went on a run together on Hope Pass.
That was definitely one of our first runs together.
Yeah.
Second. Yeah, maybe third.
Yeah. I think like fully big first date energy on Hope Pass.
Yeah. Oh man, that was so fun. I've done that section. It's actually really interesting. I didn't do a single run on the course this year.
Yeah. But you've seen like the whole course.
Yeah, but that's not really ideal. And I think, maybe if someone's Strava stalking me or something, they're checking out my training, they might look and be like, oh, he was in the San Juans or he was on the East Coast. Like, what's this guy doing? He's not, doing his due diligence. But I've spent enough time on the course. I think I had to make the one weekend I really had an opportunity to go there. I made a strategic decision to stay home because life stress was way too high.
Yeah.
And I personally needed to take something off my plate and not travel another weekend. And then I ended up having a pretty strong weekend of training here. And it felt like, pretty much exactly what I would have gotten over there anyways, just not on the exact terrain. And I know we want to train as specifically as we can, but I think there's diminishing returns when we don't think about
you don't need
stress.
to. Right. I totally agree. I do one, kind of last thought was when I was training for Western States and I was projecting the course, and one day I was running it with Tyler Green, who got second this year. I was like, what advice do you have for someone doing this race for their first time, since you've done it several times? And he was like, like out here on training days like this, just focus on like planting all of these positive memories along the course. So that way, when you come back, no matter what state of mind you're in, you can just pick up all those positive memories that you left along the course. So I feel like we've been planting those positive memories along the course for years and years for you to pick up on Saturday.
It's a great tip.
Yeah.
I love that.
Tyler Green approved.
Nice. Thank you, Tyler. All right. Protein shakes, hot or not?
Hot.
Super hot. Need we go into detail?
Protein is life.
Refer back to our episode on protein, episode 1, I think we talked about.
Protein.
Episode 1 of the new format.
Get big.
Tofu, hot or not?
Also hot.
Yeah, I think tofu is really hot, especially if you're
I love tofu.
Plant-based athlete.
Squeeze that shit to make it actually good.
Yep, and eat a lot of it to actually get a good amount of protein.
Yeah. You have to eat so much of it.
If anybody needs protein cooking tips, what's your number one tofu?
I'd say probably get an air fryer.
Air fryer? We don't have one of those.
We don't have one of those. But press that shit. Get all the water out, because then it'll cook so much better. I actually really like it baked. For like, especially like cooking with a little less oil. Although oil is nice for frying that up, but the key really is to get the firmest tofu possible and to make it even firmer.
Phone cases, hot or not?
They should be hot, but I never use one because I always run with my phone in my bra, and I don't like having a phone case on it. Makes it like less easy to just stick in my bra. So I just destroy phones. I just go through phones so irresponsibly fast, but in principle, phone case is good. In practice, I don't practice what I preach.
You'd be a good candidate for an iPhone mini.
Yeah.
Like those old school iPhone sizes that they've come back with.
Yeah.
That way you could have a case and it could fit.
In my bra.
Yep. Handheld water bottles, hot or not?
Oh, I don't like that. I just hate carrying anything when I run. Like, if I'm taking a water bottle, I'm just putting it in a vest. Like I fully have done runs with like just a little water bottle in the vest.
Yeah.
I don't like holding things.
I'm a big fan of the handheld water bottle. If I don't have to wear a vest, I won't. Although, just referencing the Leadville training, I've been training in a vest a lot, just to get used to it. And, with time, you just get used to it.
Yeah.
And it's just another tool in the arsenal.
Oh, yeah.
You take
I love
out
the
when
vest.
you need it. Noon tablets, hot or not?
I'm not a huge fan just because they don't have a ton of like to offer. They don't have a super high electrolyte concentration or carbohydrates, and usually like during activity, I need more carbohydrate and I need more sodium in my liquid. But like for like an afternoon sort of beverage, I'll do a noon tablet.
Yeah. I don't mind a noon tablet. I'm going to go hot because I like it sparkles.
Yeah, yeah. You like that, like to turn your flask into a little pipe bomb.
Kind of refreshing. Yeah. Well, great. Thanks so much for listening. As usual, if you have any feedback, a question for a future call, or looking for support in your running journey, you can visit us on the web at microcosm-coaching.com or contact us at microcosmcoaching@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.